Hey everyone, welcome to Survive the Script, where we combine our love for horror movies and RPGs and take an adventure into some of our most famous monster movies. I'm your final guy, Nick.
And I'm your final girl, Kylie.
All right, well, the whole reason Kylie and I came together to create this podcast was that we both had this genuine love for horror movies. We wanted to basically just find ways to use both our love for D&D and horror films to make an excuse basically to come together, chit chat, and share that with the world.
Yeah. As mentioned earlier, I'm your final girl, your host, Kylie. Nick actually is my brother-in-law, as a little fun fact for the evening. He and his lovely wife, Kaya, got married in 2020, and my husband and I got married in 2021. We've been in both of each other's weddings, and we've had a blast growing our friendship. I think Nick and I are a lot alike in not just our interests, but I think our personalities too, which could drive each other crazy, but usually is a good thing for the most part.
Yeah, actually, to just kind of talk a little bit about how we met, I still remember it distinctly. It was 2019, it was the summer of 2019, and your parents were coincidentally out in Italy the same time that Kaya and I were out in Italy. Uh, for those who don't know, it was a graduation gift kind of to me from college. Kaya and I were still dating, and she just popped the question saying, "Hey, do you wanna go out to Europe with us? I've been planning this trip for a while," and I just hopped on it. So that, and then Kylie's family loves to take trips overseas a lot. So the two trips happened to coincide with each other when both parties were in Italy, and that's actually where I met Kylie. And I just remember we were chilling out in a hot tub for several hours, just talking about random movie stuff, and eventually we started talking about horror movies a little bit, talking about like how it's one of our favorite genres.
2019, I feel like, was one of the first years I really started getting into it too, because I was in a short horror film that year. I had been watching a lot more horror, and I remember very distinctly from meeting you that you and Kaya were meant for each other. I knew that from when I first met you guys.
Thank you. I
And
already knew that, but thank you.
I think you guys were the thing that kind of repaired my heart from past sad heartbreak of relationships to be like, okay, if they can do it, I can do it. I can find love. And it was like 6 months later, I started talking to my human. So you guys really
That's funny.
opened the door for
You say
emotional
6 months
healing.
later that you guys met, and then it was 6 months after our wedding, basically. It was more
Yeah.
like seven, but six
Well, no,
months later,
six
you
months
guys got married.
before your guys' wedding, because Joshua was my date for your wedding.
Mhm.
He was very upset that he was not a groomsman, but he's still.
I tried. Okay, okay. To preface that, I was only given so many options or so many slots for groomsmen,
Mhm.
and I was going. I had my friends who I had known since I was 9 years old, and for some of them, like I knew like they would show up, and others I was like, okay, I really need to give them like a reason to show up, and I'd known them since I was 9 years old, so I'd feel guilty otherwise. But I did try and make sure that Josh felt involved as though he was a groomsman. If Kaya had let
He
me
was
have more groomsmen, he would
he
have
was an
definitely been a
honorary
what?
groomsman.
Yeah, he and Boney definitely would have been honorary. That's why they got groomsmen gifts as well, because I wanted to let them know like, hey, I want you guys like I want you guys in my wedding, but for reasons I didn't necessarily like, apparently Kaya couldn't come up with two more people for bridesmaids.
Okay. It was when I got married, it was hard because I there were so many people I wanted to include, but like didn't know what the boundary line was. That's why I did only family, except for my best friend from college. That's
Mhm.
why I did it that way. Because there were so many other people I would have been like, yeah, do you want to be a bridesmaid? And that's coming from me who doesn't have a lot of girlfriends. So most of Joshua's groomsmen were also friends of mine, like you, obviously, and Jacob. So there was a lot of Joshua's groomsmen too, that I was like, you guys are my friends too.
Yeah. So I think the summary there is it can definitely be a little difficult sometimes to plan weddings, but luckily,
Lord,
I
we
made
have
sure
to
Josh
find
and I will
oh my
still.
gosh, we got to find a wedding horror movie. I feel like we'll be able to dive into that on a deeper level than most people our age, because we're both like, we're fairly young for being married, I would say, for our generation. So we got to find a wedding horror movie, because
Yeah,
I don't
oh my goodness, that'd be so funny. Let's do it. And then we
I
could
don't
just like bash it and say, that's not the worst part. That's not the most horrifying part of the wedding. Let me tell you, it's coming up with the table settings. That's the
oh,
most horrifying part of the wedding.
the most horrifying part is when things don't go according to plan, when family members just walk away in the middle of like photos being taken. You're like, no, this is our one chance to take photos with you.
No,
Or
no,
when
no,
things were
no.
running
The most
late.
horrifying part, the most horrifying part, sorry to interrupt,
Oh no,
but
you're good.
is when a family member tries to stop your wedding.
Yeah, I remember
The
there was some
week,
drama.
the week leading up to the wedding, a family member tries to stop your wedding.
Oh, yeah, I remember
That
there was a lot of stress around your wedding.
there was, but luckily it all turned out.
It did.
And like I said, I, I'm glad that Josh and I still have such an awesome relationship where it's still a joke amongst you, Kaya, Josh, and me that Josh and I secretly just wanted to marry each other.
Yeah. And if we have an Instagram page or a Facebook at this point, I will share a couple photos from both of our weddings, including the love that you and Joshua have for each other.
Oh, yeah.
Because I have some really cute pictures of you guys cuddling, canoodling. Hey, you know what? I got to show off while I can, because you don't want me to show your skiing video to our audiences. That's for
Oh
sure.
no, we don't need to see that horror. That's a real horror movie.
That is
Actually, it's probably a really
so.
good comedy.
As a little context, we both ended up in Whistler, Canada last winter for New Year's, and Nick has never skied before. And I grew up skiing. So I spent a day while they were in Canada teaching Nick and Kaya how to ski. Kaya picked it up right away. She's an amazing ice skater, and just like, she picked it up really fast. She fell a couple times, but Nick really had a gift for falling, which is the important part, is that you get up afterwards. And I think you got to a point toward the end where you're like, I don't want to get up anymore. I'm done. It's
I
like, no.
remember telling you, Kylie, if I could fly right now, I would. I want to get off this mountain. I think we're only halfway down.
I know. And I
It took all of my willpower and like never quit mentality to get myself down to the bottom of that hill.
I think you quit a couple times on that mountain, because toward the end you were just kind of falling over and over. But I felt bad too, because I made the mistake of leaving our boots in the car the night before, and I didn't realize that because they were the hard plastic boots, they were going to basically be impossible to move. So I will give you kudos there that you had super tight boots and you still went down the mountain.
Oh yeah.
So,
I remember
yeah.
I had to loosen my boots because at one point I was on the ground crying.
Yeah, so that's the only time I've ever seen you cry. I pretended I didn't notice, but be free to share your emotions at any time. That's totally fine.
Yeah. No,
I think I cried when I tried snowboarding, because I took a couple of snowboarding classes and I fell down pretty hard a couple times. So
I definitely did not feel my feet that time. That's why. Anyway, so should we move into, well, first off, we should say this episode, as the title suggests, is all about Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yes, so we're doing a four-part series on Nightmare on Elm Street. So to provide a little structure for our audiences, basically the first episode is introducing us and introducing movie at hand, catching up like we just did. And then part 2 is going to be deep diving into the film and talking about some of the reviews. Part 3 is an interview. We will be bringing in a special guest and debating, interviewing them. This movie series, there's words. We will be actually interviewing each other. That way you guys get to know us a little bit better. and get to know our love of movies and kind of where we lie in regards to the horror universe. And then part 4 is actually us playing the RPG. So for this 4-part series, I wrote an RPG. It's very short. It will be interesting to see how it goes, about Nightmare on Elm Street. And it's to see basically if any final girl, guy, or gorp can survive against Freddy Krueger. And the little guy on the chopping block is going to be Nick this month. So we're going to see if he could survive using his brain power and whatever strength he has left from skiing.
Oh, yeah. IMDb plot summary for Nightmare on Elm Street says, teenager Nancy Thompson must uncover the dark truth concealed by her parents after she and her friends become targets of the spirit of a serial killer with a bladed glove in their dreams, in which, if they die, it kills them in real life.
So, a few basic points about this film. So, it was released in 1984. It was written and directed by Wes Craven, who is also known for directing Scream. It was produced by Bob Shaye's new and budding production company, New Line Cinema, who also has produced things including like the Conjuring universe, so Conjuring, Annabelle, all that stuff. So the budget for this started at $1 million. It went up to 1.2 by the end of the production, but it grossed $57 million. And using an inflation calculator, that is 163 million plus in today's economy. So can you guess what the Rotten Tomatoes critics gave it?
Rotten Tomatoes critics. Okay, so if I had to guess, I always like to underball it.
Okay.
I feel like that's usually the case for most of these. A movie, let's see. Okay, so a movie that I guess would be considered a cult classic, usually meaning that the quality of it is not great, but fans love it anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna say probably something like, I'm gonna say 38%. I don't know why. That number just,
that is,
I'm gonna say critics thought it was terrible, but if you ask the audience, it's probably something more like, and if you ask me too, personally, I'd probably give it like maybe like an 80%, 75.
So you're really close on the audience rating. So Rotten Tomatoes critics actually gave it a 95%, which is insanely high.
Oh my goodness.
But
see,
I think when we go into the
that
deep dive in the next episode, it'll make sense why. Because I think some of the lengths that they had to go to get the film done make it like that much more admirable. But the audience score is 84%.
Okay.
So
and that makes sense. The way this also tends to go is that movies you wouldn't expect to have huge high scores, all of a sudden just that they have amazing high scores. Like, let's use for example the Kung Fu Panda movie. You think, oh, a kids movie, it probably doesn't have that high of a score or something like that. No, I believe it's something in the 90 percentile range, and I'm just like, what? Now I do love the Kung Fu Panda movies. Yes, I do. Let me preface it by saying, let me add on to that saying that I do love the Kung Fu Panda movies, and I do think they're great. It's just in general, I always come in with knowing what genre the movie comes in. I always let that create some sort of bias in my decision on what a critic thinks of movies.
That's fair. I do feel like you have a great critical eye when it comes to film, because I do feel like I lay on more on the perspective of like, I love bad horror movies. I'm really excited to watch some like very corny, horrible horror movies as we go throughout this process. So I feel like you are a great example of like having a more attuned and critical eye in that regard. A couple more basic points about the original Nightmare on Elm Street. It was known for the style was like very much guerrilla filmmaking. It was a lot of like green actors, fairly new crew, fairly new producers who were new to the field, which meant that they were very, very scrappy about everything they're doing. They're finding ways to save money at every turn. But I think that's why, part of the reason why it created such an amazing film in the end. Like, there's some parts now that are gimmicky, and, you know, us looking back, we're like, oh, that looks so corny in 2022 compared to, or 2023 by the time this will be released. But I think we can't discredit the guerrilla filmmaking tactics that they used in the time period, almost, what, 40 years ago?
Yeah. And what was it? I remember watching the Netflix documentary from
I got so many notes on that for the next
oh
one.
yeah, I have a lot of mental notes. I'm not like you were. You told me you had about 8 pages of notes on this movie, but I took a lot of mental notes just because of how busy things have been. But I definitely remember. I appreciate it. I appreciate it when people involved in a movie are willing to put their heart and soul and their own bodies, even sometimes, into what they consider their art. I think that's why a lot of people really like the Mission Impossible movies a lot, you know, because Tom Cruise, he's famous for how much fear and crazy stunts he's willing to put himself through rather than actually use a stuntman.
I feel like Jackie Chan is in that same realm too. I think that's why so many people love and have loved Jackie Chan, is because, and even Johnny Depp, I feel like they all, which we'll get more into Johnny Depp later because he's actually in this, but
it's not just in this. This is his first ever.
It is, yeah.
This is his introduction into the world right here.
I know, and I've got some good fast facts about him when we get into it, but he just is brilliant in this. And like him and Jackie Chan, and like you said, Tom Cruise, they're really actors who really just put their whole body, heart, and soul into their art. And as someone who grew up with an acting background, I so deeply admire it. So before we close off this episode, I know you heard already, but do you remember, or can you guess how many days of filming they had?
Let's see. I remember we were talking about this earlier. So number of days of filming, I believe you told me it was 32. 32 days.
Studio Binder says that Hollywood studio movies are typically shot within 30 to 120 days, depending on like the scale, genre, length of film, stuff like that. But I cannot imagine filming something that turned out the way it did in 32 days. It's definitely on the low end for Hollywood movies, but that is ludicrous to me.
What was it? I think I remember hearing in most of the mainstream movies we see today, it's something like one scene gets filmed every day or something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but is that or like one page of your script, some sort of loose metric like that?
I feel like it could lie within that range. I think it would depend on how long the dialogue is, but yeah, probably close to like one scene or one part of a scene, depending on what the setting and atmosphere are. Like one of the times that I got to go to set, we filmed for pretty much an entire day, one scene that was like maybe used for 15 seconds. And that was just because it had to be a lot of people that particular day, so it was a little bit different. But yeah, I would say if we had to throw it into very, very basic numbers, trying to create a median to follow, probably like one page of dialogue a day. Unlike the theater world where you do like an entire 2-hour show a day. So we will be spending the next 3 episodes talking about Nightmare on Elm Street. The next one, we will be deep diving into the production side, the actors, everything in that realm. The 3rd episode, we will be stepping away from Nightmare on Elm Street a little bit to talk about each other and get to know a little bit more about each other. And then episode 4, we will be finally playing our RPG. Hey everyone, thanks for watching this episode of Survive This Crit. Stay tuned for more episodes upcoming on Nightmare on Elm Street.
And don't forget to smash that like button.